This is a public service message. For no reason whatsoever, this episode of the Promoter 101 podcast will run from back to front. That's right. It's Promoter 101 in reverse.
All right. Promoter 101. 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 Promoter 101.
This is Dave Shapiro,
Mike Mills,
Sam Hunt, Joey Scolari,
Rich Best,
Tim Sweetwood,
Andy Levitt,
Sarah Beasley,
Jared Paul,
Bobby Clay,
John Phillips,
Craig Pomley,
Harvey Cohen,
Rich Schaefer.
This is Eric Mayers, and I am live
on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
You're listening to Promoter 101.
Thanks, everyone. We're wishing you sold-out shows for the weeks to come. Cheers.
Quote of the week comes from Glenn Fry. Except for a few guitar chords, everything I learned that is of any value, I learned from a woman.
We'll be back next week with a brand new Promoter 101 with UTA's king of hardcore, Mr. Dave Shapiro.
Aikens Promotions, Peter Aikens, giving us a history lesson of Ireland.
And we've got the autograph sources, Rick Schultz, dropping some knowledge about the collectibles market.
And we'll be back in normal running order.
Feel free to write us at Steiny at promoter101.net.
Hi, my name is Toby Leighton Pope. I work for AG Presents in the UK, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Finishing up our Promoter 101 hat trick of interviews, we bring you Bridgestone Arena's Senior Vice President of Booking, David Kells, giving us a peek behind the curtains at the arena. David Kells, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Fresh off your Polestar win, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's great to be part of the success of this town and the arena and the team and all that and kind of represent those folks.
You got to get those shirts printed, you know, like winner, like the Super Bowl guys, the hats, like 2018.
We do pins for everybody. All the ushers, ticket takers, front of house staff, sales folks, everybody. And we've been doing a lot of them lately. ESPN ranked us the #1 franchise in sports. We've won AIBO awards, and now we'll do another one for Polestar, and it's fun. People love it. They string them all on their lanyards and have a little bit of pride with that and show it off to folks.
It's well earned. It's not easy to stay at that level. It takes a lot of customer service. This starts with the fans.
Oh, 100%. As I've said to folks before, without the artists coming in the back door and the fans coming in the front door, we're just four walls and some seats. When people have an emotional attachment to a venue, be it a club, an arena, a baseball park, it's because they saw something awesome there with somebody that they care about. Their grandfather, a first date, all those kind of things that you saw a great hockey game or you saw a great concert, and that creates that passion or that love for an arena or a venue.
Let's talk about the fact that anytime you do an event, just by you opening your doors for business, changes the traffic flow in downtown Nashville.
Yeah, and also the kind of that entertainment quad, because it's us, it's the Ryman, it's the Send Amphitheater, it's the Skirmerhorn Symphony Center, and some nights are those awesome nights when we all have something, but it is a growing pain, I guess, of a city like ours, that people have to think of things differently. There's a transit initiative on the ballot for May. Hopefully, there's some progress on that, so people have different ways to get downtown, and we've done some things, more communication out to the fans to let them know there's construction here, this road's closed there, so they can plan accordingly and get downtown.
Well, it's in a booming economy that you guys have here. I mean, we've talked about it before on the podcast. There is a crane watch in the paper every week of the new ones that are going up and what's involved with that. But your economy is on the boom, but your traffic is also in gridlock, as if it's New York or LA.
Yeah, it is nuts. Commutes that used to take 10, 20 minutes or, you add a little bit to that, and then weather or rain and all that kind of stuff just keeps adding on. But like I said, people are at least having that conversation. The transit initiative is up for a vote, and hopefully we'll realize it's time to do something. We can't just pave our way to better traffic.
Okay, so you're a live by the sword, die by the sword kind of guy. You're just in that position. Nashville, LA, New York, the agents come in for the shows. They see the ads. There's offices for all the major agencies here and most of the indies. So everybody's here. More hospitality than the average city. More eyes, more attention, more celebrity guests. That's got to raise the game all the way across for you.
It is, but I think it's a good thing. I mean, you want to be able to show off what you do and be proud of what you do to the industry peers and to the folks who are making decisions and routing tours and all that kind of stuff. And we like to throw a good party. We like it when people are at Bridgestone Arena so we can say hello to them and invite them to the Lexus Lounge or to one of the bunker suites to hang out and, just shoot the breeze about non-work stuff in life and get to know people rather than having them just be somebody on the other end of the phone. And then you mentioned all these folks having hubs and offices here. And I've been fortunate enough to always work and live in Nashville. So a lot of us have moved up our careers together and worked together for 17, 20 some odd years. It's just a good place to be.
So the music community in Nashville's changing. When it comes to live concerts, you guys are getting the big rock stuff and the major AC stuff too. This is a real music city all across. It's not just a country western town anymore.
Correct. And I guess Nashville's image has always been country music, and that's what was coming out of here from the record label and the song publishing and the management side. But the live side, we weren't always a great selling market for country or a lot of different genres. I went to high school here, and I remember, we would have to go out of town to see a big tour because they weren't playing Nashville. And then when I started working in the music business and I was out at Starwood Amphitheater, the country shows would skip us as well because you didn't want to put on a show to a half capacity crowd in your hometown. So you didn't want to put on a show that wasn't an A-level top show. So we weren't getting things. And then 10 years ago or so, the market kind of started to turn around on the concert buying side anyway. So once fans started coming out for more shows, we were on people's radars and we were more top of mind for those tours. So we started getting, instead of the second leg of the tour, we started getting the first leg of the tour. And then we'd be on the first leg of the tour, but they choose to close with us. So they could have their backstage party for all the folks that you'd mentioned who live here or are part of the community. And we started adding doubles to shows. So it's been a long turn. But yeah, Nashville was not always a great market for sure.
Yeah, the multiples are a fun thing.
We're lucky. We have a rehearsal hall inside Bridgestone Arena. So tours can come and sit for 6 weeks and run through everything, load in, load out, light programming, and then, finally band rehearsals before they're on the road. So our crew gets to know the tours better, our operations crew and all that kind of stuff. So it's not just somebody stepping off of a bus at 6 a.m. and then jumping back on that bus at 2 a.m. They're people we have beers and coffees with during the day. But the doubles are also kind of like that. It's a more relaxed atmosphere if somebody's there for 2 days.
Show or basketball game or hockey game or what have you, or ice capades in there. There's also a tour possibly rehearsing downstairs.
Yes. Yeah. So if you're looking at an aerial view of the arena, it's the corner of 5th and Memorabilia. There's a full-scale rehearsal hall there so people can set up their entire tour rigs.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's great for the tours because everybody who's based out of here, if it's sound companies or backline or whatever, it's a couple extra days where they're at home. They don't have to rent a smaller arena in another market to camp for a week.
How much is that booked?
In the spring, it's packed. I mean, we're already almost at capacity for 2019 spring. So it's January through May is almost completely solid, and then picks up weeks here and weeks there throughout the rest of the season.
That's amazing. That's very cool.
It is fun. It's a great resource. I think when the arena was first designed, it was supposed to be a secondary venue type thing, but as it was being built, I guess funds ran short, and it's one of the things they cut. Because if you build it, they will come arena. There was no hockey team. There was no team tenant. So we were built with concerts in mind first.
As all venues should be.
Correct. And then December 96 is when we opened. And then the team started in 98. So there are some quirks and some different things that were done for us that were more music focused than some that were built specifically for a sports team.
Sports has been a huge upheaval in this market too. You guys had a really crappy secondary baseball park. It has been completely moved, renewed, and is gorgeous. You have picked up a football team from another Texas market, rebranded them, and they're doing quite amazingly well. And somebody decided that Nashville would be a good hockey town, which everybody in the nation laughed at, and now nobody's laughing. You guys have a serious tenant now.
Yeah, it's awesome being with the team. And like you said, people call us the non-traditional market, and we've kind of embraced that. If you come to a Predators game, it's not like a traditional market. People are up and excited, and there's music, and there's stuff all over the place. We've integrated what Nashville is into the games. So it's a big party with a hockey game going on, and the players embrace it. The players like seeing what we're going to do next and what the other fun things that come down the pipe are. And one thing I tell people is the team's 20 years old this year. So if you're in college and you grew up in Middle Tennessee, you've always had hockey. It's not something foreign to you anymore. It's not something that, only exists in the North. So it's just part of your everyday life. And I think it takes that generation to get used to hockey, to be playing hockey. So you have high school teams and all that kind of stuff. And then, obviously the winning makes people love you.
Winning's never a bad thing. And you control so much of that from your position.
Correct. Yes. I did get most improved in my hockey school class when I was 5. Then we moved to Alabama, so that stopped.
I find it's awesome when a team is losing. Everybody gets the blame. When they're winning, of course, the team does. Like, but clearly it's working and it's changed. So in the course of a handful of years, a new baseball stadium, football team, and a new hockey team, like this is a sports town now.
The growth of the city has been great. We've had great city leadership for the last several mayors. The city council and all of those folks have understood what we're capable of doing. Instead of being tentative or more hesitant than other places, they realize that you make good investments in your city and good things have come because of that.
How flexible is the NHL when you've got a concert coming in and they're holding like 2 weeks or 3 weeks for playoffs and you've got a show?
It's actually not as hard as you'd think. There are certain guidelines. We try to keep a Saturday or a Sunday for a playoff game. We don't book more than 2 shows in a row, so we can do a Tuesday, Wednesday, but then I'll hold a couple blocks either side for flexibility during the playoffs.
Because you're at the mercy of TV a little bit too, right? So it's
correct.
You have to give the league some options.
Yeah. And, they're dealing with, at that point, 8 other arenas in the West and 8 other arenas in the East. So, yeah, as long as you're not putting a week of, Marvel Universe Live in there or something like that, there's flexibility around the teams and the schedules so we can have everything. And it is awesome when the peak of the playoff and the excitement of the team is there while you're having big shows. I think the attention of the team on the arena and the arena events help those things sell better. And more people are interested and more people are in our database and more people are looking at the team's Twitter account so we can promote more shows at those times.
So the team is obviously heavily involved in the arena, and there's obviously that partnership.
Yeah, we're all one organization. I oversee marketing for both team and arena events. Our sales staff sell everything from rodeo to season tickets.
So if you guys are to win the Stanley Cup, you get a ring, right?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Pretty awesome.
That would be great.
So all you have to do is win.
Yes, that's all I have to do.
So not every season is a playoff year.
Correct.
So those years when the team doesn't make the playoffs, happens for everybody. Are you suddenly like out there going, okay, I got all these extra dates. Now I can go fill. Like, who's got stuff?
Well, because it's such a short turnaround, you're not scrambling to throw stuff in. But because we have that flexibility earlier, we're not completely dark. We've already have 5 shows in May. We have at least 3 or 4 concerts in June. So we have an active event schedule. But then again, you want to put as many hockey games in there as you can.
Now, you got Ascent now, which is a smaller amphitheater. It's very successful, but there is no 20,000 person or 15,000 person shed here. Has that helped with the success of your booking, not having that competing outdoor shed that has a capacity that competes with you?
I think the city is set up with a really good progression of venues and sizes. So, yeah, you can start out at the Exit Inn and Mercy Lounge and move up to a show at Marathon and then a show at the Ryman and then a show at Ascend and then a show at us. I think it's scaled really well. So, yeah, we are a beneficiary of not having something directly in town. But at the same time, these tour buses and trucks can go anywhere. They can choose to play another market rather than play Nashville. And I like to think we've put ourselves in a good spot. People know they're coming in the back door and it's going to be a good show day. And they know front of house that the box office is going to be competitive with other markets. So they choose to play us.
So you have what I would consider a top-level industry job. You don't get to run an arena without some serious background in management of big crowds, facilities, and marrying those things together. Can you give a little bit of an idea of how you get that experience and how you pulled that together?
I guess it's like a lot of folks start working when you're young and you just kind of do a little bit of everything.
There are a lot of responsibilities that you oversee when you've got tens of thousands of people in the venue that you're responsible for.
Oh, yeah.
And you're ready at the moment's notice to make a call on how to affect any of those things. Power going out or, God forbid, a fire. Like, you guys have thought of the exit plans and strategies for all of those things. You have to.
Yeah, and we've got a great team that works with everybody. Chad Ludke and David Chadwell oversee front of house and public safety. And on the public safety side, they're in touch with the NHL and Tennessee Bureau of Investigations and all those folks. So if there are any notifications that are out there, we're in the loop and we know what's going on. They're both actually at conferences right now, getting better training and more professional experience. And so investing in our crew and our staff to become better at their jobs and keep on top of industry trends and all those kind of things.
We talk about the security issue with what's happened in Manchester recently. It seems like a venue manager's job has become that much more stressful, trying to figure out all the things that we've never thought about before, the outside, the surrounding parking lots. It may not be your responsibility financially, but politically it certainly is. And obviously you want people to come and leave your venue happy and alive. So how has that changed your world?
I think it's something that everybody is talking about and everybody's looking at, which is a great thing. Tour security meetings are different than they used to be. Again, I mentioned that coordination between Metro Police and Public Works and federal agencies and the NHL and all those kind of things. People are in communications. People are looking at stuff. So as new technology evolves, as metal detectors become the norm, again, there's other security initiatives and security measures that can be put in place. People aren't hesitant to do it. People understand that this is a necessity and these are the right thing to do. People aren't being penny pinchers and not doing things. People understand this is what we need to do to put on successful events, and we want to be welcoming, and we want to open our doors and have a gazillion people come in and have a good time and then go home at night and be safe. So I think it's great that everybody is looking at and everybody's working on.
We've seen the arenas take a turn in the last couple of years to try different things. Technology advances with things like video, where the IMAX systems are just so much better. Comedians will now play arenas because you can see their faces in the back of the house with the great high-definition video screens that they're putting up. And now you're seeing some people try to turn arenas and do 2 shows in a night as if it was a PAC. That seems like, staffing-wise, that creates a ton of challenges. Getting a full sold-out show in and out of your house, turning it and resetting and doing it all again, as if it's a movie theater that you're doing it for 150 people, opposed to doing it for a full arena. Got to take some serious skill and a very good staff.
Again, yeah, it's a lot of coordination with a lot of different people. One thing that I think is awesome about this industry is you can almost cold call any other venue executive or arena manager, and they'll tell you everything that happened that night. People are open about how to do things. So if it's a tour that maybe has a unique setup that you haven't heard of before, pick up the phone and call almost anybody. So there's lots of sharing of ideas, sharing of information on events like that. Again, we have a great relationship with the city. So when Public Works and mass traffic have to do something a little bit different, it's a two-way street. It's a totally open conversation of how can we get this thing done? How can we implement this best for the city and for everybody involved?
You guys are in a market where there are a lot of different promoters. I would probably say Live Nation's the dominant promoter here now. Bob Rue has taken a serious interest in this market in the last 10 years and developed the amphitheater and a team, and Traeger's really stepped it up. But you have more players in this market. AEG is here. Alley is a very strong promoter. Outback is here. NS2 is based here. Emporium has an office here. You see a lot of different people playing the game, and you rent probably to more people producing events than the average arena.
And also, Feld has an office here, and AC and PBR, Bull Riding, they all have offices here. And that's great because people come to the shows. They're not sending just one rep.
Yeah, we haven't done a lot in your room, but I think Jason did Black Keys there and was definitely one of those shows that you wanted to cover.
Again, it's that familiarity. You get to see people. They're real human beings. You work with these people more often. You work with the great promoters regularly, or you see them regularly.
So in that line of getting a calendar and getting a room and getting promoted to a job like that, what's the path if you're working in a smaller venue and you want to rise up to the bigger rooms?
Just be open to doing anything. I never had a path to say I wanted to do X, Y, or Z. Just took what work was available to me at the time, from working in clubs to unloading trucks to being a street team kid to doing all those kind of things because it was fun. It's fun to be involved with live entertainment. It's fun to be involved with sports. And I was fortunate enough to live in this community. As it grew, opportunities opened up for me.
So venue managers seem to have become the DJs of the modern day, where they go from town to town and in a moment's notice they switch cities and switch jobs, particularly if you're in the bigger management company systems. But you grow into those extra things and you go into the out markets, into the new rooms, and you grow into the next bigger challenge. And that seems to be a thing with that job, like willingness to move and go and accept the next challenge seems to be a big part of that gig.
Yes, I think for sports teams as well as venue management, and just like the baseball players, you start in AAA or single A and you move your way up as more responsibility comes. I think that's another good thing for people to know. Willingness to move can benefit you quite a good bit.
Is there a favorite show that you had in the room this year?
It's funny, I mean, because it goes so quickly, you're almost always focused on what's next. But in the last year, we had Hall & Oates, I think like 13 months ago. And that's one of those things where Hall & Oates and Tears for Fears. I thought I knew a couple Tears for Fears songs and a bunch of Hall & Oates songs. You know every single song that both of those performers had. So that's a lot of fun. And my wife was there too, so that always makes it nice.
David, I want to thank you for taking the time and talking to us on Promoter 101.
Thank you much.
It's, of course, very easy to see that David is a cool cat. He handles his high position within this community with a lot of skill and a lot of grace.
You can hear the rev and feel the power. Promoter 101 in reverse.
Hi, this is Heath Miller.
Becca Leifer.
Ed Mike Cohn.
Derek Dimmenstein.
Jason Kupperman.
Jason Miller.
John Schur.
Marcia Flessick.
Mike Fruitman.
Ricardo Bacco.
Peter Schwartz.
Nick Storch.
I'm on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
I'm on Promoter 101.
We got some birthdays coming up this week, Dan. That's the week of May 4th to the 10th, 2018.
May 4th, that's Friday. Heath Miller and the lovely Ruth Gonzalez.
On Saturday, the 5th, we're wishing a happy birthday to WME's Michael Coughlin and Alex Ross.
On Sunday, Golden Voice founder Gary Tovar, Works Entertainment's David Britz, Ashley Bradbury, and Kat Drucker.
On Monday, we're wishing a happy birthday to Phil Ingenthal, Tamsin Preston, Mark Ross, and my co-host of Promoter 101, Mr. Dan Steinberg.
Oh, thanks. You're too kind, Luke. You just stop already. You're embarrassing me.
You've got a line to read, Dan. You've got a line to read.
Tuesday, May 8th, SMG's John Bolton, Jason Rogoff, and ICM Scott Mantell.
On Wednesday, we're wishing a happy birthday to Carl Stubner.
Thursday, Keith Marks.
We got to wish you all a happy birthday for the entire Promoter 101 family.
Rick Greenstein. I'm with the Gersh Agency, going to be on Promoter 101.
Our next guest has been in an absolute tear. Live Nation Comedy Touring's Andy Levitz here to talk about Live Nation's massive winning streak.
Joined by someone that's normally behind the microphone, as many of us in the industry are. The king of comedies right now is Live Nation Comedy, and it's Jeff Wills and Andy Levitt. Andy, welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Live Nation Comedy is the 900-pound gorilla. You guys really are the mecca of comedy, and it's not just in North America. This has really gone outside the borders.
No, I mean, it's great and to see it build over the years. I mean, I've been with Jeff now for 10 years, and I've been with Live Nation, fortunate, Clear Channel SFX my whole career, going on 18 years. I moved out to LA 10 years ago, and to see the rise and how it's continued to build is pretty incredible. You know, Jeff leads a great ship and great to work for, and it's cool to see how it progresses, you know, from the comedy clubs to the theaters and now bigger. I mean, how it's gone, like you said, from the States to Europe and just worldwide now. And there's a lot of reasons why that's happened, but it's the relationships with the artists that we really try to cultivate and grow and keep it moving from there.
Comedy in particular, you guys work with the same acts all over the place. So you have this relationships with the artist and the manager and the agent where you're part of the team and you're on the road, you're traveling. I mean, you're on the bus a lot of the times with the act. You're very ingrained as part of the team.
We are, and it's something we try to do is have that one-on-one service as much as possible, and it's something we enjoy. And I think, you know, every artist is different on how they want it set up, and a lot of that, the artist dictates it, the manager dictates it. But for some artists that we work with, it is that really close relationship. And me, for example, personally, it was moving here to LA. I kind of took over the business for Brian Regan, who's just kind of a touring beast, almost 100 shows a year, nonstop. I was essentially his tour manager at the same time, so I'm on the bus with him. And like you said, when you have that relationship, it really kind of grows. And of course, it's still a business and there's ups and downs and things like that. But when you have that relationship, it definitely helps. And, you know, I'm friends with Brian. It's a great relationship to have.
Yeah, I think in our early relationship, you and me bumped into a show that I was promoting, but you were on the bus.
Pueblo, Colorado.
Right. You're like, we have a system, no reason to confuse them. You guys settle the show. I'll just run it. I'm here anyway. You were there to make it easier for the artist.
Yeah, exactly. And you want the artist to be comfortable. And a lot of people always tell me like, oh, comedy is easier than music. And I kind of laugh at that because if you're in a band, like the Foo Fighters, for example, let's say the bass goes out or something, the monitor goes out on the bass. Like the bassist is going to know it. The tour manager is going to know it. The production manager is going to know it. And the promoter's probably going to get yelled at. Something's going to happen. But the fans and playing the arena might not notice it. You know, you can kind of go on, the show can go on a little bit. Whereas if the mic goes out on a comedy show, everybody knows it.
Only the hearing impaired people will be fooled.
Exactly. So we've had those situations come up. Brian jokes about it. He did the Nerdist podcast actually with Chris Hardwick and tells the story how I had to go on the stage in front of like 2,500 people to like fix a sound issue. And I kind of embarrassed myself on stage because I don't belong on stage. I like to be behind the scenes.
But hey, when in need.
Yeah, when an artist.
All.
Yeah, I was glad to help take one for the team. And now it's a laughable story.
Probably sucked at the moment, though.
Very much so.
You are in comedy.
Right.
And you've made a decision that that's the field you're going to be in. You guys, particularly at Live Nation, you guys have your niche. You guys do the comedy. Music is not part of your world. You made that decision. Is there a reason how that came to be?
I was lucky enough right out of college. I just wanted to get in the business somehow. And I started as an assistant to the executive director at the amphitheater in Camden, New Jersey, which is Philadelphia Market. So to be in that Electric Factory office with Larry Magid and Jeff Gordon, Neil Jacobson, all those guys, Jim Sutcliffe, it was like a powerhouse powerhouse of a market and an office to be thrown in right out of college when I thought I knew everything about the business and clearly knew nothing.
And I'm sure Larry and Jeff were happy to point out what you didn't know.
Exactly. But so I started as the assistant. The amphitheater in Camden is one of the few venues in the country that in the winter becomes a climate controlled facility. They put walls up after the amphitheater season. It's like a week-long process. Then it becomes a 6,000 seat venue. Our new venue in Dallas is like that now, actually. So I was in charge of like rentals into the venue. So it was a good opportunity to just get in the business that way. And then shortly after that, I only did that for like 8 months. And then a booking assistant position opened up in the main Philly office. And that was my ultimate goal, to be a booker. Since college, I was on the programming board. I went to American University in DC, did some shows there and worked with Seth Hurwitz and stuff when I was in school. So I moved over to the booking side in Philly, and I was Neil Jacobson's assistant for 2.5 years, which was a great learning experience.
Yeah, talk about being tossed into the fire.
Yeah, for sure. And Neil operates in his own world for sure, but he's good at what he does, and he taught me a lot. The office just taught me a lot. I learned what not to do and what works for me and what doesn't work for me. I think that was the biggest thing, of seeing how people are successful and how they do it, and then trying to figure out how I want to do it. Everybody in that group was cool and letting me kind of figure it out at my pace. But at the same time, like you said, being thrown into the fire and making it happen there. And Larry was a great mentor, and Gordon was a great mentor, and everybody in that office. In fact, just this past weekend, Larry had the 50th anniversary of the Electric Factory, and I flew back for it, and it was cool to see everybody that I hadn't seen in a very, very long time.
He is a trip, man. There's a guy with some history to him.
Oh, it was just crazy. I really didn't even know who he was until I started working there. And I'm like, this is just incredible. They've had that history of being in that family, and then being a part of Live 8 when that played in 2005. Everybody in the office kind of worked on it, and it was just one of those really cool experiences that I'll never forget. So then after being on Neil's desk, at the time, Clear Channel had a college booking department. The college market was cool because I remember doing it in college. So I had that experience of being the kid. And it was a good next step to kind of build relationships with agents, because agents clearly aren't going to turn down college money. So it was a good experience to work on the music and comedy side and kind of build my own relationships with agents and getting off Neil's desk. And even though I was based in Philly, my territory for colleges was mainly the Midwest and Texas. So I was doing colleges, comedy and music like all over the Midwest and Texas, and big, small shows, Better Than Ezra to Ludacris. That's when Carlos Mencia was having his moment. So I was doing shows with Carlos a lot. Just all kinds of big shows, some ticketed, some just like for the students. So, but it was just a really good experience. And, I always told myself, if I could like build a show with students in the middle of a field in Missouri, I could produce a show pretty much anywhere. So it gave that good experience. And then it kind of got old a little bit. I wanted to kind of take that next step. And I had actually heard from an agent that I was close with that Jeff was looking for somebody. And Jeff and I always got along. When Jeff would bring comedy to Philly, we always talked and worked on his shows when I was an assistant. So I just thought this could be a good thing. And I didn't know how good it was going to be, but I thought everybody in Philly kind of isn't going anywhere. Jeff Gordon's Jeff Gordon.
You mean like he's not leaving?
Exactly.
You can't move up because Jeff is too young to retire.
No, and there's nowhere that I'm even close to being where Jeff's at that. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just want to continue my growth of what I think and know I can do. And this opportunity presented itself, and I'm like, you know what? I think I got to think about it and take it. And I decided to do it.
So did you wind up moving to the Bay then?
Well, no. He was in LA by that time.
Okay.
He had just recently moved to Los Angeles.
Okay. So it was right after he left the BGP office to come down here.
Yeah, shortly thereafter. I think he had been in LA maybe for like a year or 2 years. So when I moved to LA, it was just myself, Jeff. We had a marketer named Mark Lowinger, who's a great guy. He works for the WWE now, and Bjorn Wetland, who was the senior buyer with the comedy division. And shortly, about 6 months into the stint with Jeff, Bjorn left the company to go on the other things. He was a manager for a while, and it was sad to see Bjorn go because he was a great mentor of mine too. But at the same time, when Bjorn left, it was kind of like, all right, now I'm the guy. And that's when I kind of took over Brian's business and Lewis Black's business, doing the day-to-day. Jeff obviously oversees everything, but it kind of gave me that start. And then from there, it's just been super cool. And the other reason that I think I made the jump, looking back on it, I didn't make this conscious decision then, but one thing that I've noticed in working in comedy now is that in music, I feel like it's a lot harder to have that one-on-one relationship with the artist.
Just for Last Comedy Festival is the South by Southwest for comedy.
Right.
All of the artists will hang out at the Hyatt bar after all of the shows are over, and it'll be a free-for-all. Agents, promoters, managers, producers,
fans,
and talents, and a little bit of the fans, will all be in the room talking to each other. And it's a little surreal because if you've never been, it's like the best friend in every movie you've ever seen ever is hanging there. And you think you know these people, and most of them don't know you. But comics are very friendly. They're used to working the clubs, making fans by talking to people. So if you truly tell them what in particular particular you like about your set, they will talk to you. If they actually believe you saw their set, they'll have a conversation because they're all about their fans, but they're also minds at work. Whereas some musicians, there's usually one guy in the band that's smarter than the rest, that their business mind got them to that level. With comics, all of them have minds because they can all write their own stuff, and they all understand the business because they got themselves there. And it's less of a wall of, you're not supposed to talk to the artist about business.
And I didn't know that going in, but that's been a big thing that is just a great thing to have, is like once you have that relationship with the artist, you have that relationship and that can't be taken away. You know, it's just, and then having those relationships and who those relationships are have just continued to build other relationships. Like, you know, as much as Brian Regan works almost 100 shows a year and kind of being his guy has been just a great learning experience from the business side and routing and everything, but also been a great experience in just getting to know Brian and the comedians that hold him to such high regard. He's the comic, you know, and a lot of people, my friends, are like, they didn't know who Brian Regan was until I started introducing them to, but comedians all know Brian Regan. And, you know, when you tell one comedian you're working with somebody else, it's just like, all right.
That's credibility.
That's exactly.
Instead of having a strip ad that runs in a weekly paper, oh, I want to be in that ad, the critical mass. It's like, oh, okay, you work with Kathy Griffin, or okay, you work with Bill Maher. That's credibility.
I'll never forget the first time I met Chris Rock. He came to a Brian Regan show. It was in Englewood, New Jersey, and Brian actually doesn't hear that well, which I'll admit. And before the show, I said to Brian, I'm like, Brian, Chris Rock's here. You know, should we have him come back and say, hey, before or after? And Brian kind of like looked at me puzzled, and let's just do it after. He kind of was like nonchalant about it. He went on stage, and I said to the opener, I'm like, did he even hear me? Like, did I say this right? So he comes off the stage, and I said to Brian, I'm like, all right, Chris is going to come back now. And he's like, apparently there's a comedian, I think out of Denver, used to be, his name was Chris Voth. So he thought I said Chris Voth, and I'm like, no, Chris Rock's here. And Brian felt like so bad. Chris comes back. You know, they hit it off. I mean, they've clearly met before, but Chris is like Brian's biggest fan. Like,
oh, that's awesome.
I remember the first time before that I had met Chris, and I said that I work with Brian Regan, and Chris said the king of comedy. Right after that night, Brian ended up had a cameo in his movie like a year or so later.
So let's talk about the skills that it takes to buy nationally. This is something that you have to learn how to extrapolate on a much higher level than buying for a single market. You have to be able to learn what the demographic is of each market, the market size, and the value of how shows sell in that particular market compared to everything else, because you're routing the tour with the agent and making those decisions. This is not a skill all talent buyers have. You do it for all of the United States and a good part of Canada you're involved with too. And then there's some international stuff when you guys get involved with overseeing your artists going to some of the other offices. You have to learn how to extrapolate on a much different level. And you're playing with loaded wallets when you're doing this. So if you're wrong, the company loses real money.
A lot of it is just being thrown into it a little bit, but I think a few things. I mean, we're fortunate to have strong local offices and people that we can touch base and rely on and get advice and assistance. They've been a great value to me, like Terry Burke in Phoenix and Dave Clark in Detroit, to name a few, and them giving their insight to each individual market and venue. And this venue might be good for Brian, or this venue might be good for Lewis Black or Daniel Tosh or something like that. Not to harp on it too much, but for me, doing colleges and Brian's tour, it really gave me a good base, because I've been to so many cities and I've been on the road. And when you see a venue and see a city, you learn so much about it just being there in person than just seeing it online or reading about it or hearing a general manager pitch it on why you should come there, but actually being there. And, you know, I've been fortunate enough that I've settled a show in all 50 states. That's kind of like a little...
That's pretty impressive,
brag
actually.
that I can say.
Once you've tackled Delaware, you can tackle anything.
Exactly.
It's a real talent, though, to be able to sit at your desk in Los Angeles and say how a show is going to do in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and then put your money behind it, or Live Nations, but you have to know what you're doing or you'll be gone.
No, I really try to learn the markets and talk to the buildings and see what's going on in those markets. And the one thing that I've always loved about the gig, and even when I was on the college side, is routing tours. It's almost like putting together a puzzle, trying to put that puzzle together and seeing when's the best time to hit those markets. And
right, because then you got to know you can't play against football in Texas on a Friday,
right?
Because high school football matters more than college or NFL. You can't go up against the church on Sunday too, because they won't come in certain markets. Right. You got to know these things in your head.
Yeah, and it's also knowing like the time to be there, and a lot of that is through just trial and error. But for comedy, I had a comedian they're interested in playing Alaska, and they wanted to do it in August. And I said, I'm really not interested. The 2 months of the year that Alaska actually gets nice weather and people can go outside.
Yeah, they go outside.
You want to be in Alaska when in January. Like, it might not be the most comfortable time to be there as a person, but that's when you're going to sell tickets. You kind of just learn stuff like that.
Let's play a fun game. My guess is you know all the venues I'm about to throw, and you can roughly tell me how many tickets are there and if it's a good room for comedy or not.
Okay.
The Moore in Seattle.
I think 1805.
Wow, that's even closer than I thought. Sacramento, the Crest.
Around 900, I believe.
The Community Center Theater in Sacramento.
22, I think, 23.
Balboa in San Diego.
1335. Just Louis Black was there Saturday.
The Beacon in New York.
2700, approximately.
The Paramount in Denver.
I think like 1900, 18 and change.
It's right there. Yeah, I think we could do this for an hour. But by the way, just to be very clear, we didn't talk about this in advance.
No.
He's not looking at a computer. This was just back and forth very quickly.
It's kind of a joke.
Chicago Theater.
3500. It's kind of a joke that I have a good memory. It's one of my, I guess, strengths. I definitely have weaknesses, but one of my strengths is I have a really good memory. So it's like when I see stuff, I remember it. So it's like routing, doing these shows and learning all these buildings. It almost, I don't want to say it comes easy, but it's like I enjoy it. Like I said, when I go to the buildings, it makes it even easier to remember because I might remember something funny that happens at the venue or become friends with the GM or something like that. So,
I like this game. The Merritt and Indy.
23, I think.
Amazing.
I always joke around. It's like maybe that'll be a good like pickup line at bars. Girls don't really like.
Girls don't know what the Pikes Peak Center holds in the Springs.
It's not going to get me very far if I know routing in the Polestar directory by heart.
Well, it's not only knowing the routing, it's knowing what rooms work for comedy.
Absolutely.
And which rooms don't. There are some rooms that just aren't good for comedy. Some rooms are harder than others. And some rooms it works. You can put a really good comedy show into Upper Darby. But there are some things that don't work all the way out at the Keswick because you got to drive so far out of the city. Like the hip working class bartenders probably aren't going to make it out there, whereas the more adult comics probably would.
Upper Darby is a great example. I mean, the Tower is a great room and tons of history. I remember that's actually the first time I met Jeff. You know, Jeff brought John Stewart to Philly when I was an assistant, and it's a great room for comedy. But you know,
You mean Jeff Wills, not Jeff Gordon?
Yeah, Jeff Wills.
When you're talking about Philly, it's very confusing.
Yeah, Jeff Wills. Tower's an awesome room for comedy, and the energy is great. But you know, some people want to be downtown and have that experience too. So there's a lot of different rooms.
Right, and it's impossible to get the Avails there. It's just a really terrible market to try and find your way into an Avail.
I remember we did John Oliver a few years ago at the Tower, and it's in Upper Darby, and John made the comment, if this is Upper Darby, what's Lower Darby? Like you said, I mean, it's learning the rooms and knowing what works. And I think being part of Live Nation, a lot of our rooms are clearly music rooms. So it's like, does that translate the comedy? And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And Jeff Wills, his mantra that we've always tried to do is, you know, what's best for the artist? And it's a long-term thing. You might be able to get him in a certain room one time, but if it doesn't work, you have to look and kind of see what's right for the artist and putting him in another room.
You guys do so many how many shows is the comedy division doing a year?
I think it's somewhere 700, 800 a year.
That's incredible. And spread over artist base of what, like 20?
No, I think it's more than that. I don't have the exact numbers, but it's more than that. You know, there's some that route a lot more, like Louis Black, Brian Regan, that are road warriors versus, you know, Dimitri Martin might do like 10 shows a year or something like that, you know? But there's a lot of artists involved now.
And now you guys have the summer festival that you tour and play the amphitheaters with.
Yeah, we didn't do it this past year, but in the previous few years we've done it. Yeah, and that's Jeff's project. And if it comes back, I'm not sure, but it was definitely a cool experience when it was out there.
Comedy in the arenas and in the sheds is a new thing, and now stadiums with Kevin Hart. This is this new moment where, because of the IMAG video, that you can try things where you can see the facial expressions, because that's always been a problem with comedy is if you can't see the facial expression, it doesn't really work as well.
That's part of it. And I think there was also, you know, there was the sales point where back in the day, I think it was like Madison Square Garden. I think Dice was like one of the only people to sell out the room or something back in the day. And I think more comedians, because business is growing exponentially, they know that they can do the business now, and they want to have those things on their resume, just like the musicians have. When
the artists turning shows in arenas as if they're theaters is amazing.
Yeah. When I moved over to comedy, I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll never have the experience of doing a show at Red Rocks. That was always like a dream of mine.
And that changed, right?
And Regan sold out Red Rocks. So
a couple times now, right?
We've done it twice with Brian. Chappelle has done it a few times. This year, Steve Martin and Martin Short. That's a little more kind of a variety type show, but they're doing it this summer as well.
You guys are just firing on all cylinders at this point. How much bigger can it get? Do you see more stadium shows with comedy? Is that going to be a thing?
I don't know if that's a thing. I mean, it definitely could be plausible, but I think, and I don't want to speak for everybody in that experience, which was Jeff and Kevin's team, but I think Kevin being a Philly guy, that eventually became a special. He shot a special, and it was like an event that he put on. Like, he believed in that.
And his touring is more of an event anyway. His production is that of a big, massive rock concert.
Yeah. So that was like a culmination of, I'm the guy and this is the career. I'm the guy in this world, and made it happen. And everybody got behind it. Could be other comedians going in that direction, but from a business standpoint, the arenas are definitely there. I mean, it's crazy. If some artists still like to have that intimate, they might be able to do arena business, but they might rather just turn 2 in theaters and have that more intimate base and play.
Yeah, Brian's like that, right? Because you can basically play arenas every night in Salt Lake, but you tend to do multiples.
We've done it both, actually. At a Bravenel Hall, which is like 2,700, we did 10 shows there. End up being like 26,000 tickets or something over those 10 shows, which beats Seinfeld's record there. But then we decided, as we kept building, we did the arena in town where the Jazz play. He did 2 shows in the round there. So just to have that experience, when we did that twice. So what's next there for Brian, we'll figure out. Brian, I think, likes to play all kind of things and experience it all.
It's a new world where you're finding different levels of comedy for everybody. You've got those YouTube stars that are appealing to the much younger audience. You guys are truly not just selling tickets to adults anymore that would come to a comedy club. You are finding every different level of the industry.
You have to kind of grow with it. And, there's that YouTube base that you mentioned, or just viral videos. Bo Burnham, Sam works with and does a good job, is that a few years ago was making videos in his bedroom. They found him and now he's a star, So there's people out there now that are just doing that same thing. So it's cultivating and finding those artists. And 2 other things that I feel like have changed the comedy game as a whole is Netflix. And speaking of this show that we're on right now, is podcasts. Podcasts have completely changed the game. Joe Rogan before he's always been a strong comedian in terms of material and everything.
But he used to be just that guy that was on Andy Dick's show.
With that, and he was comedy clubs. He would do comedy clubs and he would be a strong comedy club business. But his podcast is just absolutely massive now. It's a religion.
The UFC thing hasn't hurt him either, though.
It hasn't. And when he would have a fight in town, we would always do a show the day before. So the cross...
Right after Whiteown, right?
Yeah, so the cross-promoting was there, and it was a smart planning of that we wanted to do that together and kind of cross-promote that experience. But now that fight isn't even needed. Like, he'll still do, if there's a fight, he'll still do a show the night before, but now he can go to Austin or Dallas just on a normal concert date.
I want to ask you about promoter-friendly venues. You guys four-wall as much as we do, if not more. You're constantly going into rooms you don't own. Do you, when you're routing tours, have the ability to tell an act, this venue's difficult, I'd rather play this room or this market, and change it up and stay away from this difficult venue? Or are you constantly going into whatever room it is just because that's the routing?
I definitely try to put my 2 cents in certain venues. And like I said, having seen so many venues in person, you get a sense of which ones are difficult and which ones aren't, and which ones will really go out of their way to help you in, one thing that I look for from a comedy standpoint is just the marketing, what marketing assets they have specifically for comedy to help the show succeed.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain markets you probably try to route around. Like, I try to route around Reno every time I can.
Right. I definitely put my 2 cents in on what venues I think are better and stay away from ones that I've had bad experiences in or that sort of thing.
And then try to route to the venues that are more promoter friendly. They'll go out of their way to make it an easy day.
Absolutely. And
the Milwaukees of this world.
Yeah. Gary Witt. Shout out to Gary Witt.
Yeah.
You try to find that for sure, and try to anchor down try to get Comerica and Phoenix on a Saturday. You got to sell 5,000 seats.
It's a big room.
You got to sell 5,000 seats. You don't want to do it on a Thursday in August. It's be there when kind of the snowbirds are there. The more people in the population, you're able to sell more tickets.
Andy, I got to ask you before we let you go, can you tell us about the fantasy cap with the Orioles? Tell me about that.
So I'm a huge Baltimore Orioles fan, huge baseball fan, but huge Baltimore Orioles fan, which is my hometown. And when I was a kid, my dad actually won the Dream Week experience on the radio.
It was a contest.
Yeah, he won, and it's a fairly expensive week to do. But my dad won an all-paid trip when I was a kid. And I remember my dad doing it and playing baseball with Brooks Robinson and just other Orioles. And my dad was in heaven, and he got to keep his uniform and all that stuff. So I've always wanted to do it. And it's always been in the back of my mind in doing it. And last year I decided, what, I think I'm going to do it. I didn't have any friends going. A lot of people go with friends or a father-son combo. And I decided, what, I'm just going to do it. Not to get into too much detail, but the year before that, I had some health issues and got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, which I've since reversed. That was a big call for me to get back in shape and healthy and take care of myself. And when I started being healthy again, I was like, I can do this now. And to run around and play baseball for a week with kids with players.
But this was real, right? Like, you were like having to ice down and everything every day. They weren't going easy on you.
No, it was
like they kicked your ass every day.
Absolutely. And I was one of the younger guys there. So for the people in like their 50s and 60s, they were really hurting. But yeah, absolutely. Ice baths every day and the full trainers of the Orioles staff who were great. But so I went down to Sarasota for a week, played 2 games a day, and Chris Hoyles, who was the former catcher for the Orioles when I was a kid, was my coach. And it was just a great life experience to play baseball for a week on the Orioles turf and met a lot of great people and met the players. I think I'm going to do it again next year. I didn't want to do it this year. I feel like it definitely loses cachet after that first year because you didn't know what to expect. And when you walked in that first day to the Orioles locker room and you saw your jersey hanging in the locker, it just completely geeking out. I think I'll definitely do it again. And I made lifelong friends with...
So you keep in touch with some of the guys you met?
Absolutely, yeah. From all over the country. Like, I mean, they're all Oriole fans, so most are Baltimore, but there were a few guys on my team from Arizona who became Oriole fans when they went to Hopkins Medical School and befriended some of the players, like Chris Hoyles and some of the other players.
Yeah, I'm sure they all loved you. Then they all get free comedy tickets.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah. But it was cool because they could kind of relate. Being an athlete and being a celebrity is not easy, you know, and life on the road is not all glamorous. You had a lot to relate about, you know.
Yeah, your time as a celebrity, that must really kill you.
But yeah. But no, it was just an amazing experience to play baseball for a week, and I kept the uniform and all that stuff. So
thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us, Andy.
It's cool. It's been good.
Whether you call him Andy or Andrew, he's a Baltimore Orioles fan to the bone and one of the most knowledgeable talent buyers in the game, as he clearly just demonstrated. Luke, have you ever seen anybody that can play the numbers game on capacities of venues like Rain Mountain like Andy can? That's insane.
Well, I think there's 2 people on this podcast that could probably do a pretty decent job of keeping up on that. What's the seated capacity of the Babcock Theater in Billings, Montana?
I wasn't paying attention.
760 for our listeners out there.
The ground's already shaking. Promoter 101 in reverse.
Hey, it's Mary Hilliard-Harrington.
Henry Glasscock, a.k.a. Crystal Pistol.
Scott Scoville. Darren Lashinsky.
David Kells.
Ross Schilling.
You're listening to Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Tweets of the week. Here with us.
How about some tweets, Dan?
Hey, it's tweets time, Luke. Tweets.
It is. It doesn't matter the order of this show. It's not going to be Promoter 101 without some tweets from the man himself on Twitter, @TheJew, Mr. Dan Steinberg. Let's start here. Laziness can be painful to a type A personality like myself.
Call it type A, call it OCD. Never been professionally diagnosed, but it's got to be a strong mix of the two, I assure you.
On the lookout for a bus.
You know the one. That big sucker that everybody keeps trying to push you under.
My favorite internal debate, deciding when to tell someone to go fuck themselves.
Some days more than others, but we've all been there, right? I know you have, Luke.
Absolutely. That'll do it for Promoter 101 Tweets of the Week. Make sure you keep up with Dan and all of his tweets online, twitter.com, The Jew.
Luke, do you think we're at a point where we can just hipify it by making it shorter, just like P101?
I don't know if we're that hip, Dan.
Can we get the acronym in place? Can we be like P101, people who know what we're talking about?
I think it sounds like an exercise program.
Well, that's good, you know, because I could stand to lose a few. I'm going to get on the P101 program.
This is Andrea Johnson from ICM Partners, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
We are excited to bring back to the podcast one of our favorite segments, 3 questions. It's when the listeners get to ask me and Luke a question, or 3 of them in this case. Doesn't matter what it is. The only catch is we don't get to hear the shit in advance.
This week, our guest is none other than Works Entertainment's David Britz. He's turning the tables on Dan and myself.
Now, have you met David before?
I have, in fact, met David Britz. David and I have worked together for 7 years now. I'm starting to lose track, which is a good sign of a long-running partnership.
An impressive guy. David, thanks for coming back to the podcast.
Happy to be here, Dan. I got some tough ones for you.
Fire away, my friend.
All right. Question 1. Who is the act that you haven't worked with yet but are dying to?
Wow, that's hard. I mean, as cheesy as it may be, I got to say it's probably you too.
Well, you can't go wrong with that. I mean, that's probably a bucket list act.
Just a fool for the stadium show. What else you got?
Guys, I got a question for both of you. What is your most treasured piece of music memorabilia?
I'm not really big on the whole memorabilia thing. I used to get posters signed, but now it's just a quick picture or something. But the first arena show I ever did was Satriani, Vi, Eric Johnson, Adrian Legg at the Old Mammoth Event Center. Wayne Forte gave me that chance, and sold out show, co-promoted with Bill Silva. I've got the poster on my wall, autographed and hung up. The symbolism of that first sold out show. Although now thinking and looking around the room, I got to say it's my gold records from Reliant K and Straight No Chaser.
Well, I like hearing that. I thought that you were going to say it was the Mountie costume.
I don't know that would be considered rock and roll, but I got to go with the referee costume above and beyond that, though.
I would say those qualify as rock and roll, dude. Your panels tend to be very rock and roll.
Do you have a piece of rock and roll memorabilia that you cherish more than any other?
Well, now you're turning it on me. I would say if I'm not going to go with gold and platinum records, I have a original program from the Jackson 5 Victory Tour in 1983. That was my first concert. I have that framed. That would definitely be my most important piece of music memorabilia.
It's pretty insanely cool.
Yeah, that's definitely it for me. All right, Luke, tell me what's your most treasured piece of music memorabilia.
I don't really have any rock and roll memorabilia. I do have a signed headshot of Jimmy Buffett that he sent to me with about 11 years old after I wrote him a note. It's still in my office, which is probably a joke, but I still to this day love Jimmy Buffett. I think my most prized piece of memorabilia has to be a gift that Dan actually gave to me, which was a signed copy of The West Wing Pilot by Aaron Sorkin with a nice little note on it as well, too. That was an incredible gift from Dan.
So, Luke, I got one last one for you. What is the most fulfilling part of being an artist manager?
I think for me, it's not only the professional achievements, the milestones they hit, setting a goal and seeing the action and strategy through to accomplish something. Those things are very real. They're great to be a part of. But I think for me, it's those personal things, it's those personal achievements you see from the artist that their art has facilitated for their life that is really satisfying for me.
David, thank you so much for taking time and playing 3 questions for us. Straight No Chaser's about to announce a new tour, right?
They absolutely are. We're about to announce a new tour. Some people may hear this before the announcement. Other people may hear it after, but new tour is happening, and we're really excited about it.
Awesome. Well, can't wait to see where you guys are playing, particularly on New Year's Eve. West, y'all. Looking forward to it.
I got a good feeling there's a bunch of shows with you.
I'm hoping that's true. David Britz on Promoter 101.
Thanks, Dan.
It's good to have him back on the podcast. If you haven't checked it out already, David just did a great interview with Celebrity Access's Larry LeBlanc. I highly suggest you check it out if you haven't. And just Larry's interviews in general are great.
This time, Promoter 101 turns the night into a Thunderdome. Promoter 101 in reverse.
Hey, this is Brian O'Connell with Live Nation, and we are on Promoter 101.
In our feature interview this week, we've got a special interview with the Leighton Pope Organization's namesake, Carl Leighton-Pope, who works with everyone from Billy Ocean, Bryan Adams, Keith Urban, and Michael Bublé.
I'm with an absolute legend, Carl Leighton-Pope, in the room. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Let's do some history first, and then we'll jump into the modern day. When you go to your house, you go to the bathroom and immediately see a gold record from Elvis Presley in the bathroom when you walk in. I'm among greatness.
Well, not really. The history's very simple. In 1964, I was 18 years old. I was living in Soho, and I got a job working 5 evenings a week in the Marquee Club. The first night I arrived, Long John Baldry was playing with a young guy who was a bit of a pain, Rod Stewart, as I recall. During that time, the Marquee became very quickly the place to play, but the bands that played there were really young and arriving in London. The Who played to 35 people the first night there, and then it exploded. Keep on running. The Spencer Davis Group, suddenly Stevie Winwood was there. Moody Blues came with Go Now, and the Yardbirds played on a Friday night, and Eric Clapton wore a suit and was the guitarist. So all of that stuff was interesting for me because we were all about the same age. We were all 18, 19, 20. I was working in the hottest club in London for live music, and all these young bands were coming to town starry-eyed, hoping to play at the Marquee. I mean, it's easy now to look back and talk about how famous they are, but that was my beginning. And, of course, my record collection, I was buying lots of records. I'd bought lots of singles, Runaway and Hey Baby, Bruce Chanel. I'd always been a record-buying music guy. I was a fan. That's why the job in the Marquee was extraordinary for me.
The Marquee was here in London?
It was in 90 Water Street in Soho, yeah.
So you were lucky enough to be a teenager at ground zero for rock and roll.
Absolutely. I mean, the 60s, in 1962, I was 16. I was a mod. I bought a scooter. I was fighting on the beaches. I mean, I grew up with the mod culture. And of course, the coming of The Who was I knew The Who when they were the High Numbers. They were our band. They were the mod band that we all followed. You know, it was an exciting time. About fashion was exciting, but people don't realize how important music was in the 60s. Music very definitely told you the people you hung out with, the clubs you went to, the dances you did, the clothes you wore, all was around this wheel, and in the middle of it was the music. Absolutely.
Amazing. If you lived in a different city, would have you had the success in the industry that you've had?
No, the industry is right here, or it's in New York, or it's in Los Angeles. And I think it's easy to find that out. I think what happened specifically in the 60s, where there were certain cities in England that had a music scene, was amazing. And the obvious one is Liverpool, the Beatles, and everybody that came out of there. There was the Manchester scene, which is where Spencer Davis and the Moody Blues came from. Different cities had different scenes. But the truth is, all roads led to London. And I was living in Soho, which is the heart of London. I was living 100 yards from Carnaby Street and buying my clothes there on a Saturday, right in the middle of it.
To open up the history of rock and roll and pick a moment and point, I don't know that I could pick a better moment to put myself in than the moment that you just happen to find yourself in.
Yeah, and I think also it's interesting. I was doing something the other day. I was doing a speech the other day and talking about the fact that in 1960 I was 14 years old and my body was changing, and so was the world. And I didn't even know. You know, my father looked like my grandfather, but he never looked like me. And so my dad and my granddad used to stand by the bar drinking together, and they looked like brothers. And there was me on the end. I had different clothes, different attitude. I asked different questions. Something happened in the 50s after the war, going into the 60s, which changed the world. It was the most extraordinary. And we didn't know. There's no point me going, oh, yeah, we saw it coming. We didn't. We were just having a laugh. It was just too much fun.
So you're working at the club in the coolest part of Soho, and the best bands in the world are coming through. You probably didn't see this as a career at the moment. This was a job, and yet developed into an amazing career. How do we get from there to where we're at now with the career that you've built, which is epic?
I'd made some money and I wanted to be really full-time in the business. Working in a club's great and meeting all these guys were great, but we didn't know, you know, we're just hanging out really. I mean, just as an aside, and just to show you how confused I was, in 1965, a year later, Ronnie Scott opened his jazz club, a famous jazz club in Soho. So I would leave the marquee at 11:15 at night and be sitting in Ronnie's at 11:30 watching Jerry Mulligan and the Modern Jazz Quartet and all these great jazzers. And coming from The Who to that just kind of really screwed up what kind of music I really like, which is sort of interesting for me, how I now represent Michael Bublé and Bryan Adams, both of which been perfect for me at the age of 18 and 19 years old. One rock, one jazz. It's great.
And that club is still there, too. Ronnie Scott's is still legendarily
yeah, still
there.
Ronnie's gone, God bless him. And we just had the best time. He used to let me in. I'd sit up the back and just listen to the best music ever. I was musically confused but happy. But I made some money in the late 60s, early 70s, and I invested it unwisely, I suppose, on reflection, in a recording studio in, of all places, Cardiff in Wales. I am Welsh originally. Wales has always been this sort of land of song. Welsh people are great singers. And I had this weird idea. Tom Jones had already arrived with It's Not Unusual and was a great singer. And I thought, if I go to Wales and open this recording studio, they'll be queuing around the block, singing their heads off, and I'll have the next Tom Jones. Sadly, not. The engineer in the studio was 18 years old, was in a little band called Sassafras. They didn't have a PA system and they didn't have a van, and I had money. And that was the entrance fee for becoming their manager. You end up being the guy that stands at the back of the room at the club, and the guy is saying, who do I pay? And somebody says, oh, you should pay him. And then you are really the manager, you know. And I signed him to Chrysalis Records, and we made 3 albums for Chrysalis. I had my first entrance fee into the world of real music in 1975 when Sassafras were booked to open for 10 years after in America. I was 29 years old. I'd actually never flown on an airplane, and suddenly I was flying to New York with my band, my 5-piece band and 2 roadies, and going to play 20 arenas in Northeast America, starting in Topeka, Kansas. And I'd never been to America, and bands are great because you're the manager. They think you have all the answers. I didn't even know how planes landed. I was sitting in there thinking, oh my God, this jumbo jet's huge. What are we going to do? But the limos arrived and I was in New York, and then suddenly I was on a flight to Topeka, and then I was at a gig in an arena, and Fleetwood Mac played in the middle on a 3-act bill with 10 years after farewell tour. I think Stevie and Lindsay had just joined the band, and Rhiannon was the big hit. And I was looking at them, they're English, obviously, or 3 of them are English. And Christine Perfect, I knew her from Chicken Shack days. And it was just amazing, these 10,000 people. I'd never seen 10,000 people. We were a club act. And we were out there playing and people were screaming and going crazy. And then Peter Frampton joined the tour and was recording Frampton Comes Alive. And that was happening as well. And I met lots of great people, including a guy named Derek Sutton, who was running Chrysalis Records. And he was very kind to me, English guy. And he helped me on the road and helped me buy and do all the things that I should and taught me how to tip people and, do all the things you do in America.
Is that something you have to learn, how to tip people?
Well, because we didn't tip anybody in England. You're kidding me, aren't you? I was just a kid. I didn't have any money. With all that 30 cents a case. I can remember now exactly what it was. It was 30 cents a case. We had 5 cases. So I used to tip exactly 30 cents a case in every hotel. No more, no less. I kept meticulous accounts for the whole tour. And then when I came back from America, I realized that Sassafras were never, ever going to be the band for me. And so in 1977, I got a job. I worked for an agent named John Sherry, and he had a company called Sherry Copeland Artists with Miles Copeland, who had found the Police and was off on a tangent. And John had sold the company and it had become NEMS, interestingly enough, which was the original Beatle company. And I joined them with no acts, not really understanding, but John Sherry really liked me and offered me the job. And I sat at a desk with 12 agents sitting around me. Ed Bicknell was there, Ian Flukes was there, and we were all on the phone. And you had this booking pad, you had to fill it all in and then hand it to the contract department. And then you had your phone book and you had a phone and you sat at a desk.
Were you actually taking the deals over the phone by numbers? Because you didn't have the faxes
nothing.
then.
We had nothing. We had no internet. We had no email. We had no fax. We had nothing. We had the phone. And in those days, really, a lot of the stuff that we booked, first of all, they weren't playing big arena tours because there was only one arena in England. There was only Wembley. There were no other arenas. And so, most of the bands were playing theatres or clubs. And I didn't have any bands. It was just me. And I sat at my desk. It's a true story. I sat on my desk for 3 days and I went into John Sherry's office. I said, look, John, I've been sitting on my desk for 3 days. Everybody's on the phone. I don't know what to do. I'm really sorry. He went, he said, I've got you a band. He said, the manager's coming in today. So I meet a guy. John Sherry obviously introduces me as one of his top agents. And the guy gave me this package. He was Australian and he was quite clean. And I thought, oh, you're not really in the music business. Turns out he was in the chemistry business. Anyway, he gave me the package. I took it back to my desk and I tore it open eagerly. And I looked at it and I realized that it was Woody Woodmansey's U-Boat. Woody Woodmansey was the drummer in Spiders and Mars in David Bowie's band.
Oh, wow.
The record was dreadful. It was so awful. And I thought, what am I going to do? So I called my friend Jack Barry, who was running the Marquee Club. And I said, Jay, you've got to help me out here. This is my first. And I knew him quite well from Sassafras days. Yeah, and working there and everything. So I said, what do you want? And this was in the spring. This was in June. I said, you've got to give me a day at the Marquee it was a split at the door. So it wasn't difficult. Right. He said, I'll give you a Monday for Woody Woodmansey. I said, oh, great. I said, hang on a minute, Jack. Reading Festival. You've got to give me a spot on Reading Festival. He said, you're mad. I said, no, Jack, I've just started as an agent. You've got to just give me one show at Reading Festival. Please, come on, Jack, do me a favor. And he said, all right. He said, I've actually got a cancellation. He said, I've got a really good spot, but I wasn't going to give it. He said, you're a friend of mine. I'll give it to you. So I said, when is it, Jack? He said, 11 o'clock Sunday morning. Do you know what? The 11 o'clock Sunday. And it rained. It always rained at Reading Festival. So you were playing to like 7 guys and a dog. And the dog was usually drowned while they dragged it through the rain. But I called the manager. He thought he died and gone to heaven. And Woody Woodmansey jumped over his drum kit at the end of the show and basically disappeared. I never saw him again. But what came from that was I got a band called The Motors, who were a big signing for Virgin. And I knew the manager from when I was a manager. And he wanted somebody who he was friendly with. So he gave it to me. And Derek Sutton suddenly phoned me up one day. This was the most extraordinary phone call. And he said, I hear you're an agent. And I said, yeah. And he said, what are you doing? And I said, I've got a band called The Motors and I'm going to America. He said, really? I said, yeah, I'm going to America on Thursday because there's a girl who's recorded a Bruce Springsteen song called Because the Night. And she's looking for an agent. And I've been introduced to her and it was Patti Smith.
Wow.
So I'm on a plane and he said, that's fantastic. He said, I'll meet you in New York. So I fly to New York. I have the meeting with Ina Maybach and I make the deal. I'm Patti Smith's agent. I've only been an agent for like a month or 6 weeks. And Derek Sutton said, I've left Chrysalis. He said, I'm managing a band. They're sort of doing all right in America. He said, actually, they're doing great. But we've got to come to Europe. He said, and I really need someone who I know. So I said, what are they called? He said, well, they're from Chicago. They're called Styx. He said, we've got this album coming out, Grand Illusion. He said, go to A&M Records in London. I've called them already and told them you're the agent. So go there. And
you're already the agent before you got the call.
I know. And he said, and make the deal. He said, we want to come and tour Europe. So I said, oh, fantastic.
Was this like 77?
78 this was, yeah. Okay. 77, 78, something like that. So I said, okay, great. So I go back to England. So now I've done some European stuff with Sassafras, and we've driven to Germany, we've driven to Holland. I'm suddenly about to book a European tour for a band. My God. And the first thing I did, Ed Bicknell said to me, get a bigger map. And so I did this really small map that looked like you could play Paris and Milan back to back. So I went out and bought a big map with mileages on it. I thought, oh, right, okay, I've got this now. It's 700 miles.
You need to know that. That's important.
It's kind of interesting that you've got to get those facts straight. So now I've got this big fuck-off map in front of me, and I'm going, okay, right, well, we start in London, Holland. We get there, 22 miles across the channel. Yeah, got that, blah, blah, blah. And the phone rings, and the guy says, Carl. I said, yeah. He said, you don't know me. So I said, no, I don't. Who are you? And he said, I'm from San Francisco. My name's Herbie Herbert. I manage a band called Journey. Derek Sutton says you're the best agent in Europe. I want you to book a Journey tour. Go and see CBS. I've told him you're the agent. Derek Sutton says you're great. This is great. He said, we want to come in, whatever it was the month. Call me back with the dates. This is bad. Let me give you my number. So, because we got nothing. We got nothing in writing. And then we're issuing contracts. And that's all we've got, right? So now I've got Journey. Then John Barrack phones me up and said, I just spoke to Herbie Herbert and he really likes you. He thinks I hadn't booked any dates. and he said, I've got a band. They've got to come in the summer and play. They're called REO Speedwagon. You'll really like them. He said, they're from Champaign, Illinois, blah, blah, blah. At CBS, go and see. I said, I'm already going to see CBS. So Journey said, yeah, well, when you're in the building. So then another guy phoned me from the South and I didn't even know who he was.
Gave you a career before booking a show.
That's going crazy. And I'm sitting there now. Suddenly I've got like 5 or 6 tours and I'm Europe and I'm talking to record companies and I'm going a bit mad. And I'm not a stupid person. I've got the juice, so we're doing it. Motors are doing okay. That's coming together really well. I've got this, and I pick up this band called Molly Hatchet who wanted to play Reading Festival. Wow. So I booked Molly Hatchet on Reading Festival. That's no problem. Another guy calls me up and says, I'm a friend of Derek Sutton's. I said, oh, not another one. He said, yeah. He said, I manage Al Stewart's going to have a big album with Year of the Cat. I think you should. So I went, all right, great. Well, send me the date. Now I've got like 10 acts that are working. It's going crazy. And Chrysalis called me up and said, we really need a new agent for UFO.
You're the guy.
I'm in the office at 8 in the morning. I'm leaving at 10 at night. So they moved me out of the booking pit, which was where there were like 15 agents all sitting around in a circle. And they moved me into this room. And the room has got Ed Bicknell's in there and Ian Flukes. Ian Flukes had this big French desk, which he sat under because he didn't like the noise. So he said, sit under his desk, surrounded by pieces of paper. I think he was booking Talking Heads, and he was booking some nice stuff. Ed Bicknell was booking Jerry Rafferty, which is a Baker Street tour, which I always thought was a great record.
Did Jerry ever tour? Did he work?
Yeah, only in Europe, and only one tour. So I kind of came in with all this stuff. And me and Bicknell got really close. And I'd known him from before. And we started going out to lunch every day and talking about what we were doing. And he was really good. He said, you should call this guy. And there's a guy in Holland. You should call him. And I don't talk to him. He's a waste of time. Talk to this guy. Talk to Fritz Rau in Germany and Marcel Aaron, Marek Lieberberg, Mammoth Concerts. And you've got to talk to this guy, Andre Bashir. He's great in Switzerland. So suddenly I'm getting all of this stuff, Franco Mamoni. And my roster is getting bigger and bigger. So I've got Wishbone Ash. All these acts, it's all going ridiculously well. And of course, with that, other agencies started calling me and offering me a job. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, I've got a job. It's going really well. So John Sherry came in one day and he was a really good guy, John. And he said, I didn't realize it wasn't his company. And he said, I'm leaving. I'm going to resign. And I said, what are you going to do? So I'm going to manage Wishbone Ash. So I said, well, I'm their agent. He said, no, you're going to keep the band. Don't worry about that. He said, I'm going to sign another couple of acts. He said, I don't want to work here anymore. So he said, why don't you leave and start your own business? He said, you've got like 25 acts or something. It's ridiculous. So I did. So me and Phil Banfield and Norman Dugdale started a company called Performing Artists Network in 1979.
Did you guys go by PAN?
Pan Agency, yeah. And we had staff, we had a building. It was like, it's only 6 of us, right? It wasn't big.
From the time you started as an agent in 77-ish to
2 years.
That's quick.
Something happened that changed my life, really. And to be fair, credit where it's due, I am about to book the Paradise Theatre tour for Styx. And I flew to Boston to the Spectrum to see the show. It was a big show. So I flew back to England. Of course, in those days, the promoters wanted an opening act on all the tours because they could ease their pain with the buildings. Because if you had a break, their F&B, their food and beverage went up.
To the roof.
Yeah, and it would help your rent. So who's going to open for Styx? I had, I think, 3 feet square in the middle of the stage. I was looking for a one-legged guy who played mouth organ. I mean, that's more or less about the amount of room I had. I got a call. This was the real changing moment. I got a call from Marek Lieberberg in Germany who said, we found a band from Canada called Saga. And he said, you should put them on a Styx tour. So in the post comes this envelope, and I open it up, and it's got a load of albums in it. I put the Saga album on, and I'm hearing keyboards. Oh, Jesus. I mean, like...
It's not going to fit in the 3x3 space.
Not even close. There's no one-legged guy. There's no mouth organ. And I loved it. The record was amazing. So then I get a call from a guy named Clive Corcoran, and he's English, and he's in town, and he said, I'm Saga's manager. Could we have a bit of breakfast? So I go to the Montcalm, and we sit down and have a bit of breakfast. And he said, we want that Styx tour. And I said, you have a better chance of being struck by lightning unless your band can stand on top of each other in the middle of the stage. And he said, if you give me the real amount of space I've got, I'll fit my band into it. I will. And he said, I won't take an inch over. So I gave him the drawing. We put the package together, Styx and Saga. And they opened at the Hämmerleinhalle in Nuremberg. Saga went on stage, and Michael Sadler, just tall, thin. The rest of the band were good-looking kids, got the 80s thing going on with the cut-off things. And they went to the front of the stage, and suddenly the crowd went mental. I mean, they went crazy for Saga, the opening act. And I suddenly thought, my God. And I'd got them, obviously. I was their agent. And I started to spend more time realizing that a lot of the acts that I was touring, specifically the American acts, Journey, REO, Molly Hatchet, Styx, all those bands, they weren't coming back. They'd come over here. I think Herbie Herbert said to me, why am I coming to Europe to play the dime machines when I can play the dollar machines in America? They were making so much money in America that they decided that they didn't even want to give 4 weeks a year to Europe, which they all should have done, and they'd all have a career here now, but they didn't, and that was their decision. And I kind of felt that the agency business was really good, but was it really what I wanted to be? Was it really what I wanted to do? I'd had a taste of management, which I liked, being in control. I'd become an agent, which was good because I was good at it. And also the managers that I worked with, I was learning all the time. So I decided that I would maybe look at another string to my bow and see if there was something else out there that was a bit more than just booking tours. And 2 things happened in 1981. I was in the Festhalle in Frankfurt. I got a call from the singer with UFO, from Phil Mogg, who said they'd fired their manager. They were broke. They needed someone to manage them. And I said, don't make a quick decision. You've got rid of someone. Why don't you guys just stop for a minute? And they said, no, we've already decided who it's going to be. And I thought, oh, no, really? And I said, who? And they said, well, you, of course. We don't know anybody else. So I fly back to London. I suddenly thought, this is like a big rock band, And so I called Bill Olsen, who was at ICM in New York, who was their agent.
Who was running ICM, right? He was the guy.
ICM. And he was very angry, and he was very aggressive. And he said, what the fuck do you mean you're the manager? I said, well, they fired their manager. What do you want to do? Do you want to sit around and wait for somebody else to show up? You know me, I know you. He had booked the Sassafras tour that I did in 1975 when he was at Premier Talent working for Frank Barcelona. And by now I had a good rep in the world. Tom Ross was on the phone. I knew everybody. And I was beginning to get some kind of kudos into who I was and what I was. And I said, well, I'm going to manage him. I said, great respect, Bill. You and me, whatever you want. If it's a real problem, then I'll find someone else. And he went, and he had a big Iron Maiden tour and all that. And he, like you said, he was running ICM. So Bill called me and said, listen, Troy, I will start all over again. There's a big tour in 82. And he said, I didn't mention it because I was so angry. It's a 2-act bill, 8 months in America with you and Ozzy Osbourne, with UFO and you and Ozzy Osbourne. And you got to meet Sharon. And I said, well, I know Sharon. I knew her from the business. I just knew her from being around. I looked after Ian Gillan for a while, and she was always around Sharon. She was great.
She grew up in the business.
Yeah, well, and her father, dad. And I knew Don, and all that. So we took a meeting, and she said it's 8 months. And so we talked about a deal. She said, this is the deal, and this is the money. So I said, great, fantastic. Also during this time, Clive Corcoran came to me and said, look, I don't actually manage Saga. I said, so who manages them? He said, well, I do. But he said, actually, I own it all. I own the publishing. I own the recording. I own everything. I have complete control. And I'm going to start negotiating record deals and publishing deals for them around the world. And I'd like you to be standing next to me when I do it, because it brings another area of the world into the deal. And we can make these deals together, and we can share some revenue, and you can be involved in it all and all the rest of it.
1 + 1 = 3.
Yeah. And I thought, well, you know something? You know, my roster was getting smaller. All the American acts had gone, and the motors had split up, and, you know, all that stuff was going on. And I thought, well, you know something? I wouldn't mind just kind of putting my name to this. So 81 changed my whole life there. I started to control Saga with Clive. We did the big tour. And, of course, we started at the Reunion Arena in Dallas, where we did about 85% business. And I had said to Sharon, how do we do more business? I don't understand. Do you want UFO to do? I mean, they took tons of drugs, UFO. Oh, unbelievable. So I said, do you want them to do something, which wasn't easy? And she said, well, Ozzy's got a plan. She said, we'll sell out everywhere. Don't worry, your bonus is safe. We're going to make a lot of money starting tomorrow. In San Antonio, everything's going to change on the tour. And I loved Sharon. She was great. So we got to San Antonio. Ozzy went to the Alamo and peed all over the front door, and all the shows sold out. So it's like a sort of a marketing plan, really, but not the kind of marketing plan that a lot of other people do. You read her book. It's in the book, you know.
The night before, she tells you not to worry about it. Ozzy has a plan. And the next day this happens, and suddenly you guys have all this promotion.
No, I had no idea. I think Ozzy was just the most extraordinary guy. And Sharon, in my opinion, was one of the best managers and people that I've ever worked with. I learned so much from her, and she was very good to me. She took care of me on the road, and UFO weren't easy. They were a difficult band. They actually had made the decision when we got to Lubbock, Texas, that they didn't want me on the road, and they took a lot of drugs. And I didn't take any drugs. So I was sort of interfering really with their social agenda. So I was thrown off the...
They didn't want the babysitter on the road?
No. So they sent me home. And during 8 months, I think I made 6 more trips to America to get them out of problems and solve things on the road and try and kind of make it work. But it was a great time. And interestingly enough, I was talking to Ian Flukes, who subsequently had U2, lost U2 and left the business and is now in the magazine business. Just bought a magazine called Kerrang! And I genuinely believed, and this is true, I really believe that there's another great young rock and roll band out there with long hair and loads of trouble, and I wouldn't mind taking that ride just one more. I really wouldn't. And then, of course, 83, I was in Dortmund at the Westfalenhalle at Peter's Pop Show to try to meet someone called Bryan Adams, his manager, trying to meet Bruce Allen. And he had Loverboy on this TV show. And I flew to Dortmund to try and meet him and found him in catering and introduced myself. And he said, "You've come for Loverboy." And I said, "No, actually, I had Styx and Journey and REO Speedwagon and all those bands. And to be honest with you, they never really did very well in Europe. I have no real interest in Loverboy. I've come for Adams." And Bruce was great. Bruce shook my hand. And by 85, we got the Tina Turner tour of Europe. Barry Marshall promoted Tina. Brian had written It's Only Love. Great song, great duet with Tina. We were suddenly on that tour, and Brian was amazing. I've never met anybody in all the bands I'd worked with, all the people. He was so determined and he was so focused, and he wanted to get there so much that if you didn't run as fast as he did, he was going to leave you behind. And I really felt that with Brian. I was so excited about the songs he was writing and about the energy on stage and about the commitment to his career. But the deal with Tina was very simple. We went on and did 40 minutes on an arena tour, which was seated because it was like an Ike and Tina Turner thing. Right. It was the Private Dancer record. It was the new Tina Turner. And then Brian would do 40 minutes, and we had to work hard up there to get any reaction. And then he would wait in his dressing room for the entire show to finish. And then Tina would introduce him, and he would go out and sing the duet with her every night. And at the end of the tour, we played 3 nights at Hammersmith Odeon, 3,500 people a night, sold out. And we never played anything short of an arena since. I mean, Brian exploded off the back of that tour.
He's still an arena act over here in Europe, right?
Yeah, arena and stadiums, small stadiums, yeah.
States he does solid theater business, sell out, but he's a theater act. He's not an arena act, but over here,
he's huge. And he made a big commitment to Europe. He has a home here. He liked Europe. He liked being in London. He liked the food. I think the entire Styx rider when we toured was McDonald's hamburgers and Kentucky Fried Chicken because they didn't trust European food. Whereas Brian just embraced everything as a French chef. I mean, just everything was just great. And he and I and Bruce Allen we just did it. We just went out there and just went after it. And then, of course, he wrote everything I do. Then we were in stadiums. We played Wembley Stadium. Brian worked and worked and worked. He never stopped. It was the most extraordinary thing. And Bruce made all the right decisions, in my opinion, one of the best managers in the world. He understands his artists, understands where they're going, and has a realization of music and direction. It's fantastic working with these people. So Brian, through the 90s, makes the Neighbours record. We're busy. Then into the millennium, it's going great. And I've got other acts. I've got Van Morrison, I'm booking Van. Probably got 10 acts. And my business is great. And it's quite small, my business. So I never wanted, everybody offered me jobs and wanted to buy my company. I wasn't interested in any of that. I was interested more in just being me and doing what I wanted. Toby came to work for me. Jake did some tour management for me. So I managed a band called Matt Bianco, who were a big act on Warner Brothers in Europe. I had my Saga stuff that I'd done. So we'd made a lot of money. We were in good shape.
Let's take a second because you mentioned Toby and you mentioned Jake. So your offspring with themselves is huge in the industry. Andrew is a big agent. Jake is at CAA. Toby is AEG here. You have created your own spawn of the industry. It's amazing.
It's a dynasty.
It really kind of is.
Well,
your daughter works for you too as well, right?
She did. Oh, well, she runs my property company. That's a separate issue.
But she was in the business for a while.
She was my assistant for a while. And I think it comes from more or less being born into the business. I was in the business from 60s into 70s. And as my kids got older, they were at all the festivals. I remember filling their ears with cotton wool and carrying them around Reading Festival. And they were always around. And when they went to university, I got them a job as a local promoter. I think the first gig they did was Oasis at some college in Wales, working for Tim Parsons. And so they were always in the business. I remember, I was the guy who invented the Chippendales in 1991. Me and an American guy.
And you still tour that, right?
My son Andrew does, yeah. I do about 150 shows a year still. Gave it to my son as a millennium gift.
Hell of a gift.
Yeah, it's not bad. One time in the 90s, we had 4. I had one in the West End for a year, 1 touring UK and 2 touring Europe. It was huge. But, we had a merchandiser, had a heart attack and died on the road in Berlin. And I put Toby on a plane. And Toby flew out and sold merch on a Chippendale tour and humped gear. And, they all did all the stuff that you're supposed to do. The best part about it was we were in Cologne. I think they were carrying too much cash. And so I had gone to Cologne to collect a load of money off the tour manager. And Toby walked out the building. They'd done the load out. And Toby was just going to get on the bus. And my wife, Pamela, said, "Get him a hotel room. What's the matter with you? He's your son." And I said, "You can't do that. He's on the road with the guys. Get him a hotel room, But he was great. He did everything they wanted, sold the merch, he humped gear. Jake was tour managing all over the place, and everybody did it. Andrew took a band to America. And to be honest with you, I'm a son of a coal miner. So I'm first generation music business. The life it's given me and the life I've led, why would I not want my children to come in and have the same life that I had? It would be criminal.
But you've always embraced them knowing the business. I mean, Toby has told stories about coming to ILMC as a small boy with you.
Yeah.
Literally grew up not close to it. He grew up in it.
Well, he not only grew up in the business, but all of his uncles, Uncle Andre Bashir, Uncle Marek, Uncle Herman, Uncle Leon, Uncle Thomas Johansson. We used to go to their houses. We'd be on holiday in Europe, go around to Andre's house. So when Toby went to Live Nation, came to me first and was my assistant a couple of years, and then he got headhunted and went to Live Nation with my blessing. Of course, all the big, they all knew him. And Bruce Allen loved him, Dennis Desmond, everybody knew Toby and Jake, because they'd been there, all the time. When I used to do my 2-hour Friday, which was the opening for the ILMC, I used to do a 2-hour panel on my own. I hated people on the stage with me. I used to just do it on my own, start a row. Me and Pino would start rowing, and everybody, we just, Chuggy and me, we just have such a fight. Harvey Goldsmith and I had the best fights.
2 hours?
Yeah, on my own, yeah. Just going through stuff and getting people to argue, and getting people to get angry.
Just you instigated.
Oh, yeah, no, it was terrible. You asked Martin Hobel, he'll tell you. It was called The Talking Shop, but it was really only me. And I used to do some terrible stuff. He said, we've got to have the 2 guys who do tax. He said, withholding tax, and always a Dutch guy. There's a Dutch guy and a German guy. And he said, they've got to come up on the stage during your talking shop. They've got to do something for 5 minutes about tax. And I went, really? He said, yeah. So I introduced them both, and they came up on stage. They started talking about withholding. And I had got the hotel to slide this pillow under my desk. So I got the pillow out and put it on my desk.
You went to bed?
I fell asleep. It was brilliant. And then about 10 years ago, maybe a bit longer, I used to think about it, right? And I'd have topics. I knew what I was talking about. I can't write a speech. I just do it like I'm doing it with you right now. So Martin said, you've got to talk about secondary ticketing. I said, I haven't really, it's nothing, why don't you give me, it's sort of like, I'm going on. It's like half an hour before I went on. I said, you could have given me a bit more notice. He said, well, just slide it in as something that we've all got to be aware of, and we're going to talk about it in depth, all that kind. Just give it a bit of a, So, I said, we're going through stuff. And I said, oh, by the way, I said, something that the whole conference, we got to start taking the future seriously. And one of the things that's coming right around the corner at us is secondary ticketing. And I look like that. It's a true story. I look like that. And I could see Harvey Goldsmith. He was standing up and I could see blood running through his eyes. And you could see, he grabbed the microphone off this poor microphone girl. I think he took her arm off. He went, secondary ticketing, what are you, crazy? And he came out jumped up and and I thought, oh, perfect, Harvey. I said, actually, be honest with you, I'm a great believer in it. I think it's the future for the business.
Just because you want to wind him up?
Harvey went mental. He was so angry. He was screaming. And, we all know where secondary ticketing went, So really, I suppose, kind of circling back to my career, I think approximately 17 years ago, almost just after the turn of the century, I got this white label from Bruce Allen with a load of covers on it. It was a Stevie Wonder song, a George Michael song, and all this Michael Bublé or something. So I thought it was a wind-up. So I called Bruce. I said, it's a great record, good compilation record, but I've already got all these songs. He said, no, I'm managing him, and you're his agent, and we signed to Warner's. Get on with it.
You just thought he was sending you a greatest hits thing.
I'm listening to it thinking this is a greatest, it's like a compilation.
Mixtape.
I loved all those songs. I did. The great Bee Gees song on there was brilliant. So we decided to bring him in. I met him in Paris. Mike was great. Brought him into London. We had a night out with Jake and Toby and the boys and Randy Burswick. Had a really good time in. He was obviously going to be a lot of fun to work with. And then we did the showcase. I make the deal with Toby, who's the promoter of Live Nation, to present Michael Bublé in a club in London, and he's going to have to pay for it all. But we're going to just bring all the record company and, nobody knows who Michael is. We're getting some jazz radio, nothing going on. So we put it all together. Toby said, no problem. I've got it. Deal. He's going to bring in a small band. It's all going to be great. And about a week before the show, I sent him an email saying, oh, sorry, Toby, I forgot. You're going to have to supply and pay for a grand piano. Sent me back an email. I said, no. So I thought, I'll do it a different way. I wrote an A4 page. Dear Toby, I'm sure you're aware of the fact that I've been in this business for some years and it's the people I've represented and obviously, and quite well respected and deal-a-dee.
Just in case you don't know who I am,
Oh, yeah,
son.
yeah, the whole thing. No, like a strain. And at the bottom it said, you will supply and pay for a grand piano. So then I get the obvious one back. Which bit of no didn't you understand? He said, which bit of no don't you understand? And by the way, can you tell Mum I won't be coming to Sunday lunch? I've got another appointment, right? So it's on this email. It all goes really well. He supplies the piano. It's all fantastic. So scroll on now. And I cannot remember who the new president of Live Nation was now. Before Michael Rapino was now running the whole of the world. Michael was running Europe. So we have this dinner, which I'm invited to. Live Nation dinner, and I'm sitting next to him. So we're having a few drinks and we're sort of loosening up. So it goes on and on. So I tell him the story. And I said, and of course, the best part of the story is that on the email that Toby eventually sent me back, it said, don't forget to tell Mum I'm not coming to lunch on Sunday. So the president of Live Nation then goes back to his room and writes an email to Toby, which is 3 feet long. I've just had dinner with one of the most senior agents. And as a representative of Live Nation, I was hoping that you would be. And it went on and on about how they wanted Live Nation to be seen and treating agents around the world and better relationships. And so it's fun. And he got right down to the bottom. And he said, and in future, I'm hoping that we will get better rapport with the agents in the UK. Sign so-and-so, president, worldwide president, Live Nation. P.S. If you're not coming to lunch on Sunday, you should call your mum yourself. Toby phoned me up and went mental because he was scrolling. So it's not like he had it on a sheet of paper. He was like, every time he scrolled, he went, oh, Dad, what have you done? My career at Live Nation is over. You've killed me, you idiot. Stop drinking. It was brilliant. But, you know, the Bublé story was sensational. Bruce and I went to Warner's. We banged heads with them quite severely over our decision to play a week at Ronnie Scott's club. It's like 6 nights, 12 shows, and they don't turn the house. And Live Nation, John Reed was running Live Nation. They were convinced that they should play a really nice theatre with Michael because they saw his audience as being the people who want to sit in a nice theatre.
Well, the crooners, right.
But my argument was, if nobody really knows who Michael Bublé is, then first of all, you're going to say he's in town on Sunday or Saturday or Friday, and they're going to say, oh, I'm not available on that day. If you've got him in Ronnie Scott's club, 300 capacity room for 6 nights, if they say I can't come Tuesday, say come Wednesday. Every night it was full. The critiques we got off it were just sensational. People fell in love with him. I mean, it was brilliant. And we went from there, 2 nights sold out of the Albert Hall, 10 nights sold out of the O2, 55, 60 million albums later. It's 17 years and we're coming back next year. In fact, we're coming to Hyde Park in the summer, that very park, to play to 65,000 people. And we'll come back next year and do a world tour. It's exciting. You know, the business is exciting, but being an independent in the middle of it is something that you have to be aware of all of the time. And I think it's important for me to realize that the only way that people are going to come to me now and want me to represent them will be that if they have a problem at a CAA or they don't like William Morris or whatever it is, and that they're not big enough for Live Nation or AEG to buy them for the world. So my market window is quite small, but I run a small business. I'm incredibly happy. I've got 10, 12 wonderful clients. Keith Urban, I just absolutely love. Cesar Millan is my client. You couldn't want a better client than Billy Ocean, who is just magnificent. Shakin' Stevens and I play golf together. I love him. Brian, Michael. My life is really, really good. I'm in a better place now than I've probably ever been in my life. And watching my children grow up in this industry and do well. If you were ticking father boxes, I'd have ticked them all.
You just mentioned Michael Bublé is going to play Hyde Park.
Yes.
That's booked by your son.
Yes.
So when you and Toby are cutting a deal, is that more entertaining and fun for you, or do you treat him like any other buyer, or is it more competitive of who got the better of the father or the son on the deal?
And I've been very, very fortunate. My wife simply has never, ever been able to understand how I can spend 2 hours in an afternoon arguing with somebody and then going out and having dinner with them in the evening. I've been blessed with the ability to separate my business from myself.
You leave it in the ring.
I do. And I mean, Toby will say the odd thing like, oh, not that one, Dad. You know, like, you taught me that one. I know where you're going with that. Let's go different. You know.
I know that playbook.
Yeah, I know that one. Yeah, but you know, we're big clients for Toby, Michael Bublé, and Bryan Adams. He's not doing his father any favors here. He's got a business to run. He represents AEG. I think it's the most important thing for me to try to make artists understand is that the manager and the agent are probably the only 2 people in their lives that are making a commission and therefore have the artist's income as being foremost, whereas everybody else, Merritt, Herman, everybody out there, Live Nation, AEG, whoever it is, all work for themselves. So ultimately it's about them trying to make as much money for them and me trying to make as much money for my client, which ultimately makes me a lot of money. So I do understand. What I never did was I never threw the Live Nation book in anybody's face. It's not my style to go to a promoter and say, well, Live Nation lose money on everything, so why aren't you losing money on my acts? I'm not comfortable with that at all. I'm comfortable with the relationships that I've had for many, many years, irrespective of the name above the door. Leon, I would never do a show, like I said to you before we started this, I would never do a show in Holland that Leon Romakis didn't promote. I wouldn't. And I wouldn't do, you know, I work with Merritt exclusively in Germany on Brian and Michael. I work with Dieter Zeymelman in Germany on something else. Adolfo Gali exclusively in Italy. I work between Pino and Neo in Spain. Alvaro gets all my stuff in Portugal. I've had these relationships forever and ever. And, I'm not the kind of guy who's going to say, well, now you're working for Live Nation. You're a different person. So I'm going to do business with you in a different way. I've survived because I do a really good job for my clients and I represent them properly. And it's not about me. Always been about them.
Well, you certainly show more loyalty than most of the industry has ever known, and certainly it's paid off for you in the long run.
There'll come a time, and I don't know when that is, and I would never forecast it. There'll come a time when I'm done. And when I'm done, I would like to think that there are if we're all still around, I'd like to think there were 6 or 8, 10 people in my phone book that I could sit down with and eat some food and call them a friend, you know. And even though we banged heads and argued, I mean, I was in Marcel Avram at the weekend at his 80th birthday party, and I've known Marcel all my life, and we've done lots of business together. But I chose to work with a different promoter in Israel for Bryan Adams last December, and chose not to ask Marcel to bid for it. And he was very unhappy about that. But he was also very understanding. And I was at his 80th birthday party, and I was invited. And he loves me, and he loves my wife, Pamela. There was a mention, but there was no, it wasn't like, well, call Carl and tell him he can't come. We've all been doing it for too long. We've had those relationships, and we've made those decisions. I'm fine.
It's a genius career that you've led, and it only continues. Thank you so much for talking to us on Promoter 101.
I hope I didn't ramble too much, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time with you.
I've had the honor of befriending the Leighton Pope family over my travels to London, and I think the world of Andrew, Jake, Toby, and of course, Carl and Pamela. Such a wonderful family. I'm so impressed with their impact on the music industry.
Sunday, Promoter 101 in reverse, now!
Mike Luba, Madison S. presents Promoter 101.
It's time for everybody's favorite announcement of the Promoter 101 Badass of the Week.
This week, we have found a truly deserving member of the music industry family, possibly the biggest brain in the industry and truly one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. From 888 Management, the great George Curry is this week's Promoter 101 Badass of the Week. Congrats, George.
Very well deserved.
My name is Reese Ryan Steinberg, and you can watch my daddy on Promoter 101.
News of the week. He with Masui.
It's time for the news of the week, Dan. Start here with some earnings from Wall Street, because you know I just love geeking out to financial news. Spotify announced its first earnings and financial report since its direct listing a few months back on Wednesday afternoon after trading, and the stock dropped about 9% this morning in early day trades. While the company announced they hit a new milestone of 75 million paid subscribers, and the revenue grew by almost 25% in spite of what I'll note is some crazy foreign exchange headwinds. The stock continued to drop today, and gross margins, free cash were on the high-end range of their guidance. And a nice little report from here that I really enjoyed from their 10K was that the CEO, Daniel Ek, predicted the company would approach 150 million paid subscribers on their platform by 2020. That's basically doubling where they are right now in just 2 years. And I'll also note that the dip today probably should be taken with a grain of salt. That's been a bunch of the headlines across the board that's trading down after hours, or right now as we talk on this podcast, it's down about 6% in the day. There was a massive run-up leading to the last 5 days before the earnings call. So I think a lot of bulls in this stock got burned in a last-minute run-up here. And stock market is all expectations, man. That's all it is. Buying the rumor, selling the news, and a lot of people are selling today.
I'm not an investor in Spotify, but it's not so easy to take it with a grain of salt if it's your cash that just got dropped down by 9%.
Yeah, and that's not my point for this particular thing. I'm saying you take it with a grain of salt because everybody out there is going to use a headline like Spotify dropping 9% as a way to challenge the fundamentals of the stock or challenge its streaming position, the broader recorded music marketing place. And there's definitely a lot of bears out there trying to knock this stock down. I'm just saying that they're going to use a headline and a 5-day ramp up for a bunch of people on the institution side of things who are betting on this stock achieving at higher expectations than what it actually set. Point is, I think the takeaways from this company is the more than robust guidance on growth that Daniel Ek set out and what 150 million paid subscribers means for the rest of the recorded music business and the key components of the IP that we all trade in. So for anyone out there writing that headline today, I hope that you include some sort of caveat about the 5-day massive institutional ramp up leading up to their first earnings calls on Wednesday and the lack of frothiness in the marketplace around this today too.
Wow, Luke, is your brain heavier than the rest of ours?
That would explain the size of my head, yeah.
Well played, sir. Well played. Gibson Guitars officially filed for bankruptcy protection this week, Luke. That's a legend coming down.
Their instruments are played from everyone from B.B. King to Jimmy Page. This is an institution that self-admittedly doesn't know how they got there. And it's only in the form of a life raft and some renegotiations with their creditors that they were able to continue operating today. I found this quote pretty interesting from a Reuters report that George Gruen of the world-famous Nashville guitar shop, Gruen Guitars, said, "Gibson's name and company and reputation for making guitars is tarnished, but not dead by any means, and it's very much capable of being resuscitated." So keep an eye on this. The market for $2,000 electric guitars out there is not seemingly growing as fast as everyone kind of banked on when they cut this deal in the early 2000s. Reuters is also reporting that Chinese giant investment bank Tencent is readying for a $4 billion IPO in the United States. Why are we talking about that? Why is that news? First of all, it's huge. It's a $25 billion valuation. It'd be the fourth biggest U.S.-listed tech IPO on record, with some names like Facebook, Spotify very recently. So it's a giant offering. And two, you should note, since Tencent's last funding round, they've traded 10% ownership Spotify. Spotify's got 10% Tencent and vice versa. They launched a label with Sony Music, and they led a $115 million investment round with the India-based streaming platform Ghana. This is a major player in all forms of music tech today, on the label side, on the streaming side, all across the board, and it's coming to market near you. So seeing some maturity and some growth and some investment flow into the recorded space after a decade and a half of near lifelessness is a really encouraging sign for all of us, I think, in the business who are helping our artists to make money and promoters selling tickets for those artists. This is a good sign. So let's keep an eye on this for the second half of 2018 as Tencent prepares their IPO.
Live Nation continues its buying streak. They have acquired a stake in South America's largest festival, Rock in Rio, buying a share from the festival's founders and partners and creditors for the previous owners, SFX, which is now Lifestyle. Rock in Rio is considered one of the largest festivals in the world, and it is overtaking Brazil and amazing in South America. Attendance is 700,000 fans from like 62 different countries. It's insane. A party for sure.
Last piece of news of the week, Dan. Reading that on Monday, Polestar launched a new version of their website. Some sleek new features, some new designs. Dan, I feel like we're always on this talking about contacts or histories or what's playing in a room. Have you checked it out? What do you think?
First of all, they didn't just launch it this week. It's been up for a little while, but they did kill the original website finally, so it forced everybody to the new Polestar.com, which has always existed. There's always been a Polestar.com that was like for the public to check out. But now the industry side, you can log in and you can do it all at the same site. So they're not companion sites. They're actually the same site, just one's a login version. I hate change. You know, I was familiar with how the other system worked. I have been on the new system for a couple months now because you can only pull the tour histories. They stopped letting you pull the histories on the old system a while ago. So we switched over to using the new one. Although the database does pull a lot quicker, it's sleek. I'll get used to it, and I imagine at some point I'll love it. I'm not a big fan of the big squares at the top. I kind of like scrolling down, looking at the news the way it used to be, but I imagine I'll like it. But I'm a fan of the newsletter that we get from Polestar Daily, and Celebrity Access has their Encore, and Dave Brooks has started it all with the Amplified, and IQ sends theirs, and Billboard sends theirs. I think even the Ticket Scalpers have one now too. So you get like 6 of these every day, and throughout the day you get updated news that's coming in. So it's kind of cool. You get to see the headlines that are, you know, or who's covering what over something else. I prefer that now. The newsletter emails are my go-to on to get my industry news. And of course, by listening to you on this podcast, Luke.
I hope that you listen to something a little bit more seriously than this, Dan, and are checking the news more intermittently from this. You've got a lot of newsletters you read. I love that form of consumption for this, too. Are there any other places that you're getting your music news or general news in general?
Just like you, I'm a fan of making outgoing phone calls and talking to people and hearing what's going on firsthand. There's a lot of news out there, and there's things that you just don't hear quite often. Like the fact that Chris Moore resigned from Seymour has not been discussed in any of the public outlets yet. And I assume it's public because, you know, he's not there. What's going on with that? He left a company that's named after him. Something's on the changes. You know, he's not done.
Right. Interesting stuff. We should have some of our friends that listen to this podcast and write on this stuff. Maybe this is a new little tip. That's it for News of the Week.
This is John Schultz. I'm Windish.
Charlie from Crescent Ballroom.
Craig Newman.
Dave Brooks.
Dave Ratner.
John Holiday.
Doug Bicknell.
LX.
Imong Shah. Kelly Lefko.
Gerald B. Henley.
Harlan Fry here.
Jack Ross.
Jason Miller.
Jeffrey Fox.
Joe Escalante.
Blair LeBlanc.
Martin Atkins.
Neil Dixon.
Nick Farkas.
Paula Palazzo.
And I'm on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101!
If you've missed any of our past podcasts, well, you're in luck. You can catch up anytime at Promoter101.net. This week we feature a classic reissue of episode 39.
Episode 39 features the head of talent at House of Blues, Michael Yerke.
Festival production mastermind from Bottle Rock Napa Valley to Coachella to Stagecoach. Ken Dean tells us about building production on the next level.
And we'll explore how At Venue is changing the merchandise game with technology when Sean Edison stops by.
If you haven't subscribed to Promoter 101 yet, well, you're probably not going to. You've been listening for a while on your own, and we can't force you. We can't guilt you, and clearly begging is not helping. So have some sympathy. Please do it for us.
We are literally begging you right now.
I think we're past begging. I guess this is where we start whoring ourselves for subscribers. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm Lucy Dickens from ITB and I'm on Promoter 101.
Luke and I are always globetrotting. Catch up with us when we appear in your town.
Get ready, Canada. Steiny's back on the mic. Tuesday, July 24th, will be at IAVM's Venue Connect, the 2018 promoter agent panel with a star-studded lineup from CA's Brian Hill, APA's Ralph James. Emporium presents Jason Zink, Frank Productions' Charlie Goldstone, Live Nation's Riley O'Connor. Wow, this list is crazy long, Dan. You're going to be doing moderating honors up in Toronto. Make sure you check out IAVM.org.
Turns out we are going to be able to broadcast this one after it plays. So I think we'll play it on the 26th of July, which would be the Thursday night, as we always put up Thursday. So if you're not able to globetrot up to Canada to hang out with us, we'll play the panel in its entirety for, I guess, for you all to make fun of all of us. I don't know. It should be actually really cool. Riley and Brian Hill and Ralph. Jesus Christ, what a great lineup.
Yeah, seriously.
You can always follow us on Twitter at WLukePierce if you're looking for the Lukey one. I am the Jew. And the show, well, it's Promoters 101 with that S after the R and before the 101. Luke would say that that's the plural promoters, but I tried to go a longer, different way to get there.
If you could say 10 words when you could say 30, then you're just not really trying.
West Wing reference from the Luke one this morning. Hats off to Aaron Sorkin, as always.
Yes. We got a new thing this week, something we announced last week. Win a chance to be Steiny for the day. You can guest co-host this podcast with us. Drop us a note as to why you think why.
Got shit to talk? Email that shit directly to us. Steiny at promoter101.net. We'll respond to you, believe it or not. You know, you got something to say it to my face. You got shit to talk? Email it to us. Let's hear it.
This is Jason Flom,
John Valentino,
Jesse Lundy,
Dan Smalls,
Gino Shelton,
David Simone, Ant Taylor,
Natalia,
Harvey fucking Leeds here
on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Wow, we did it. We made it to the start of the show. Welcome to Promoter 101. It's episode 81.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Promoter 101. You just heard interviews from the Leighton Pope Organization's namesake, Carl Leighton-Pope. It's a guy working with Billy Ocean, Bryan Adams, Keith Urban, Michael Bublé, just a family of promoting royalty from the UK.
We also had Live Nation Comedies, Andy Levitt talking about his winning streak.
And Bridgestone Arena's Vice President of Bookings, David Kells, gave a peek behind the scenes of one of the busiest arenas in the country's curtains. And Works Entertainment's David Britz turned the tables on Dan and I.
We couldn't have done this episode without the amazing special guest, John Schultz, just doing that monster truck voice that only he can do. Thanks to Bill Young and to John Schultz for helping out this week and making this week work in reverse. I guess the only thing left to say is welcome to Promoter 101.
Welcome to Promoter 101.
I'm Sarah Beasley from Wolf Trap, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da.